ghouls and fiends, welcome to an impromptu live Ministry of Horror on YouTube or whatever platform you're watching this on at a later time. Or listening, various various things going on various platform streams. I'm your host, Tez. This is the Ministry of Horror, your one-stop shop for horror news, reviews, and every so often a featured presentation. Apologies, we didn't do a show last week. That's because it has been batshit fucking crazy recently. So to put it in perspective, if you are watching the video of this, you might be thinking, now, that doesn't look like the Ministry of Horror HQ. Well, it is the new Ministry of Horror HQ. So we had a little period of doing shows from the boudoir. That's right. Post ankle surgery, I was bedridden for like well over a month, and we did some shows from there, which is why there was no video, because that would have looked hella weird. Did a couple, one or two shows, maybe not many shows back in the Ministry of Horror HQ, but this past weekend, with the incredible help of some awesome friends and family, we were able to clear out a lot of stuff from this office, which was my wife's office. I know I'm such a mean husband, kicking my wife out of her office. Clearing some stuff out of there, moving a lot of stuff from my old office into this room, stuff going up and down the stairs, things that I, with a cast on my leg and crutches, would not be able to do. Things that my wife, who is heavily pregnant, should not at all be doing. So yeah, thank you very, very much to our friends and family who stepped in this weekend, working together, working with us to, essentially get us into a position now where we have an empty room for a nursery. So we've now got all the trials and tribulations of getting decorators in and then getting all the furniture up there. But that's the big work has been done. So it's good. We're not just in a position of like, oh my god, how are we going to move any of this when I can't walk without crutches right now, and my wife, she be pregnant. In terms of what else has been happening, there's not been that much really to watch horror wise. I mean, I know you'd be thinking, oh, Tez, we've been eating good recently where you've had nothing to do, so you've been watching a lot of horror films. There's just really not been that much coming on. I mean, Shudder has been fairly poor for new stuff. I mean, on their Shudder top 10 for the week, I don't know how often it gets updated, it's had This Is Not a Test at #1 for like 3 or 4 weeks. Films are subjective, they're up to preference, interpretation, whatever. I thought that film was kind of hot garbage, but it's probably indicative of the fact that there's not much new stuff going on there. That hot garbage is #1 on the app, or on the Prime channel of the app, to be fair. We are live, as mentioned. We've got Eddie Hickey in the chat. Hey, Eddie, how's it going, dude? Great catching up in the chat. Thank you very much for always supporting the channel. So yeah, Shudder has been, yeah. And outside of that, I mean, I'd gone for a little period where, because I couldn't get down to the cinema readily, easily, because of not being able to drive with my cast on my leg, so being very dependent, which I hate, being very dependent on others to take me to the cinema. I've been more inclined to rent films or purchase films if the price is right on Prime Video on Demand, Premium Video on Demand. But there's just not been anything in the last week really that's landed in the store or landed generally on the service that has kind of grabbed my attention to watch. So it has been a bit difficult to one, find the time to watch things, because the last weekend, hella busy. Also the World Cup. I know some football fans, horror fans, there might not be a huge crossover. World Cup's been a lot of fun, if quite corrupt. But in terms of the films that I watched, I was very fortunate to get sent a screener by Strike Media. Thank you very much, Strike Media, for sending me a screener for The Troll, which has been a Sundance entry film. Going to review that a bit later on. Clickbait from 2026. Now, I feel I have to preface that, because when you search for the film Clickbait on Google to get like a Wikipedia entry or get some assets to put on the stream, there's a lot of clickbait films. There's one from like 2018, one from 2022, 2025. Clickbait Unfollowed on Tubi. So there's been there's a few there. So 2026, it is available on Prime. So if you get the wrong film, that's not on me. It's not my fault. And also talking about Prime, Over Your Dead Body, which is the latest horror comedy from Jorma Taccone of The Lonely Island, starring Jason Segel, who I enjoy some of his films from all the way back when he first appeared in Freaks and Geeks, a TV show from Judd Apatow, and Samara Weaving. We're big fans of Samara Weaving on the show. Ready or Not 1 and 2, Babysitter, tons of others that I'm probably not thinking of. Scream 6, she has a small role in that. Very, very cool. As Eddie mentions, it's been a low week for horror, but Evil Dead Burn is coming out on Friday. I think it's actually, we've got potential screenings from Thursday this week. I'm not going to be able to get down the cinema this week. One, again, because it's just a busy old week. It's also the wife's birthday this weekend. So, I'm not going to be saying, oh, can we go to the cinema? But I think me and some of the pals are going to hopefully go next week. So I'm going to avoid spoilers. I'm very hyped for it. It looks incredible. Evil Dead don't miss, as far as I'm concerned. It's really one of those, I suppose I could say like a sleeper franchise, just because whenever I think horror franchises, I instantly go, Halloween, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, and these franchises that have been going on since the 80s, since the 70s, whatever, late 70s. But invariably get to a point when there's a lot of duds in there. Evil Dead been going on since the early 80s. Sure, there's been a huge lull in output from Army of Darkness to Evil Dead 2013, and then obviously Ash vs the Evil Dead, but it really hasn't got any duds. I will admit I didn't finish Ash vs the Evil Dead. I got bored in season 2. But I did find that it was one of those shows that I'd put on and then do something else. I never really gave it my full attention. I did find it a little bit boring, I must admit, and I know I'm probably going to get slaughtered for that, like a deadite. But yeah, didn't really vibe with it. But Evil Dead Burn is out this week. Very hyped for that. Resident Evil should be out, I think, next week or the week after. I should have that information readily available, but I don't because I'm a goober. But I'm hyped for that. I mean, yes, on one hand, the fact that there's no characters from the Evil Dead games. I'm not going to include the previous Evil Dead films because what am I talking about? Resident Evil. The fact there's no characters from Resident Evil, the Resident Evil film that's coming out, and you can tell I've not done a live in a while. The Resident Evil film that's coming out in the next week or so. On one hand, yes, there's no characters from Resident Evil that we know of at this stage. I think the director has pretty much confirmed that. It is set in the world. It is set in Raccoon City, but we're following a courier who's an idiot. I like the trailer does look brilliant. I have huge faith in the director, Zach Kreger. Huge fan of Barbarian, huge fan of Weapons. So I have the faith. I think I'm just a bit like, ugh. Oh, I would have just liked a Spencer Mansion. The difficulty is, though, you could say I'd have liked a Spencer Mansion film. I'd have liked a Raccoon City, or Nemesis, whatever. But Welcome to Raccoon City did try and do that, and it was not that good. It wasn't very good at all. Like, it was too authentic without being very good. CGI was terrible. There wasn't really any scares. It was more focused on, look, we've got this character. Look, we've got this character. That's great. But use them in the right way, create the right moments of fear, of tension, of terror. Didn't do any of that, from memory anyway. So we may well just be getting a really good, potentially really good horror film that is set in Raccoon City, and is called Resident Evil. But a good point was made actually recently from my coach Jim, that hey, Resident Evil 7. That revitalized the whole series. That didn't have Leon in it. It had Chris, sure, right near the end, but it didn't have Leon, Claire, Jill. Wasn't set in Raccoon City. Wasn't directly, the T virus or G whatever. It was its own story that did have some connective tissue, but ultimately it was Ethan versus the Baker family, looking for his wife, who's, you know, all that stuff. So it's a very, very fair point, actually, and I've taken that on board, that it doesn't just have to follow particular characters, even though we are closely tied to those characters due to the series to this point. In terms of Warhammer, I do have my little Warhammer table here. Trolley, I should say, really. Now, this is where if I try to get my tray out, I'm trying not to pull or knock anything over. So for people who haven't seen, because I'd have finished it on the audio-only version of the podcast, that is Angron on the video stream. If you are listening to this, then this obviously means nothing to you, but that is Angron, Demon Primarch of Khorne, probably easily the best mini I have ever painted. Don't know if it will. Will it focus? I don't know if I've got autofocus on. Anyway, so he's a badass, and he needs to live on my desk, really, not be hidden away on that trolley. But we do also have, knocking too much stuff over, this bad boy. This is a Dreadnought, and this was my first sort of larger project. Went pretty damn well, if I do say so myself. But yeah, the Warhammer haven't really had that much time in this last week to do anything. We've been so busy, not just with getting ready for baby classes. I've been quite ill last week, so when you have a baby on the way, you have to go to these NCT classes. Eddie, yes, I promise on a future live stream or future show, I will get the big goggles out. I do have the big goggles for doing the painting. Yeah, they're very, I'm sure my wife would say they're very sexy. But yeah, we were meant to do an NCT class last week, our second one, but I do not know what bug I had caught, but for about 2 days, I was like so weak. And then, as I say, we've just been busy. We're like, you know, we were in London on Monday night, went to Ronnie Scott's Jazz Club, which is probably my favourite place in London. It was absolutely incredible. If you're a music fan, you don't have to be like a jazz fan, but if you're a music fan and enjoy a nice aesthetic, good, really incredible live music, and the food was brilliant. It was excellent. So it's been too hectic really to do any Warhammer. So we'll see tonight. I want to spend some time with my wife after doing the show, but I do want to try and get some painting done. The next project, or if you're Australian or American, project is a Forge Fiend, which is this bad boy here. Is basically a monster sort of mechanical dragon type thing with arms that are also sort of cannons, but there's like a real biomech thing going on here. That's been primed grey. That's going to get painted like a World Eater colour, which basically, if you don't know Warhammer or what the hell I'm talking about, it's going to be red and shiny gold. Just to keep things simple. I really do need to whittle down Warhammer chat, because I haven't actually had any complaints yet. I think if I start getting horror fans going, bro, don't give a shit about Warhammer, then I'll take that on board. Okay, so what we got in the chat before we move on to the horror news? Probably 2 weeks on Friday for Resident Evil. Eddie says, yeah, that sounds about right. Got to be honest, lately films of games haven't been doing too well, especially Return to Silent Hill. Yes, Return to Silent Hill was... I heard the reviews were terrible. We did the review on the show a little while ago because I eventually was able to watch it. That was one of the first sort of premium rentals that I did since being bedbound post-op. And to begin with, I was thinking, I don't know why this rated so poorly. Like, the acting's not quite amazing, but visually it looks all right. You know, not too bad. And then later on, there's moments where it's like, Jesus Christ, the CGI has dropped massively. And yeah, it was quite poor. I don't think it was as, 2 out of 10 or whatever that some people reviewed it in their opinion, of course. I think I ended up giving like a 4 out of 10, around about there, because it wasn't it's not a good film. let's not sugarcoat the shit. It's not a good film, but it could have been worse. or it wasn't as bad as I had thought it might be, I guess is what we could say. Right, let's move on to the horror news. Now, I am going to have to start getting some jingles back. I need to start taking the show a bit more seriously. I used to have jingles. I don't know what I've done with the jingles. So you are just going to have to listen to my dulcet, boring ass tone. But we'll move on to the horror news. Horror news comes from bloodydisgusting.com. Be sure to check them out for all the latest news, reviews, and all that good stuff when the website works. First up, this comes from johnsquires.com. Obsession has just passed $400 million at the worldwide box office. The last time we wrote up a box office story about Curry Barker's Obsession was at the start of June, when the film passed $200 million at the box office to become the highest grossing horror movie of 2026 so far. 1 month later, the worldwide total has doubled. Worldwide, Curry Barker's box office phenomenon Obsession has scared up $403 million to date, with the film's domestic total alone hitting a staggering $245.3 million. We must remind you that the production budget for the independently made Obsession was a reported $750,000, with distributor Focus Features later acquiring the film for a reported $15 million. It probably seemed like a big spend for Focus at the time, but it didn't take very long for the company to start raking in incredible profits from Barker's little movie that could. Obsession is not only the highest grossing horror movie of 2026 so far, but at this point, it's become one of the most downright profitable movies in the history of the box office, no matter the genre. As of last week, Obsession is now also likely making a ton of money at home. The film was released on digital last Tuesday, and while studios don't typically report their digital earnings, it's pretty safe to say that Obsession is making a killing on home video. The physical media release for the film is still incoming as well, with Obsession hitting 4K Blu-ray next week. Now, I'm assuming that's in America. I have pre-ordered it on HMV because it definitely has to go into the collection. I haven't bought much physical media out all recently. I know, surprise, surprise, baby on the way. And also Warhammer, but that's probably um but it's a must own for me. Like Hokum I bought digitally because I didn't see any news of a physical media release for it. I wanted to see it at the cinema. So in my logic, I would have spent that money to go see it at the cinema and get popcorn, so buying it digitally is no different. With Obsession, I really do want to rewatch it again because I thought it was absolutely incredible at the cinema. But I am happy to wait until it goes to physical, because that is one that, Jesus, if someone like Second Sight or Arrow or whoever did a steelbook edition, I would have to get the steelbook, or a special like limited edition box set. I'd have to get it because it is so good. And I think I've said on the show previously that it's just cool to see that YouTube creators that you started following a little while ago start working on a horror film, or they've done a few short horror films, and they've got a new one coming out which has a bit of buzz, but then it just absolutely explodes. Word of mouth, marketing, social media, absolutely incredible. And I can also see here that Backrooms has now also made 349.7 million. So Backrooms is one I do want to watch. As soon as it lands on premium video on demand, I will be I will be buying it. I take a stand when it comes to spending £16 to rent something and watch it once, or £20 to own it digitally. I will own it digitally for that extra £4 and watch it as many times as I want, while it's kept on that library. Hint, Sony, hint. So, yeah. Eddie in the chat, let's just have a quick catch up. What's going down? Yeah, that is what I was thinking. Just the CGI in the ending was weird, but it did have a good circular narrative. It makes sense though, because Obsession was the greatest horror of 2026 by far. In regards to Hokum, it was okay, but not great. You will enjoy it in terms of Backrooms. I watched it last month and it was great. Yeah, I'm very. The majority of the plot for Backrooms has been ruined for me, because as soon as it came out, parts were being posted on social media like X, which I know X is a hellscape, but people don't do spoiler warnings anymore, and you could argue don't read, but yeah, curiosity sometimes when a scene has already been ruined for you, you can't help but then go, what's this? What's that? But I haven't seen the whole film. I don't know the exact plot of it. I very much do want to watch it though. So yeah, we'll move on. we'll move on. Fall 2 Deadpoint receives PG-13 rating for violent content and bloody images. John Squires writes up. The Fall franchise heads to a new location with new characters in the upcoming Fall 2 Deadpoint. The brand new Lionsgate sequel has received its MPA rating this week. Now, just a little bit of a pat on my own back here. This is quite cool. A little while ago on the TikTok, Ministry of Horror channel got followed by Signature releasing, which is very, very cool. And I follow the backs now with friends. I'm friends with Signature. And there's been a couple of times where they've posted new trailers up. And I'll just comment like, oh, it looks cool, like it or whatever. And then they'll do a quote, like a video response where my reply is on the screen, which I imagine they do that with lots of creators and lots of channels, but it's still very, very cool. And with Fall 2, I can't remember exactly what I wrote, but I did a little bit of a funny. And they responded with another clip of the film with my response, which is, I know it's very nerdy, but it was pretty cool. Anyway, releasing in theatres on September 2nd, 2026, horror sequel Fall 2 Deadpoint is rated PG-13 for strong language, some violent content, bloody images, and drug material. Harriet Slater stars in the upcoming Fall 2 Deadpoint alongside Arsema Thomas and Tom Brittany. Michael and Peter Spierig direct Fall 2 Deadpoint from a script by Fall writers Scott Mann and Jonathan Frank. From the survival hit that tapped into the fear of heights and left friends stranded at the top of a tower comes a climb that goes higher, gets deadlier, and hits with next level adrenaline. In Fall 2 Deadpoint, two friends take on new heights in Thailand, where unpredictable terrain, extreme exposure, and nowhere to hide push survival further than ever before. Overwhelmed by her sister Hunter's death, Jax connects with Luce, Hunter's fearless friend. To heal, they attempt the infamous plank walk of Mount Kwan in Thailand. After a sudden rock slide leaves them stranded on a fragile plank 3,000 feet in the air, Jax must confront her deepest fears and fight for survival to find closure. Fall 3 has also already been greenlit, with Mann returned to the director's chair. The first Fall was a surprise hit in theatres, scaring up 18 million at the worldwide box office in 2022. I enjoyed the first Fall film. I actually found it kind of surprising that the movie I watched a couple of weeks back, Killer Whale, which was terrible, starred one of the stars of Fall. Night and day in terms of performances, I'll just say that. Yeah, Fall 2 looks fun. I probably would actually quite like to see it at the cinema, just because while it's not an out-and-out horror film, I mean, I can't just talk about going to the cinema just to watch out-and-out horror films. Me and the wife did go and watch Toy Story 5. It was great fun. But it looks like a good adrenaline type film, like if you're watching like a Twisters at the cinema. So I'd be well up for going to see that one. Eddie in the chat says the Ted's response is always a funny response since you're off your head at times. I'll take that as a compliment, Eddie. I'll take that as a compliment. We'll move on to our next bit of horror news. Got a couple more here. The End of Oak Street receives PG-13 rating for violent content and bloody images. Tom Squires writes, before he returns to the world of It Follows for upcoming sequel They Follow, director David Robert Mitchell is first playing around with dinosaurs in The End of Oak Street. The upcoming dinosaur movie from Warner Brothers and producer J.J. Abrams has been rated PG-13 this week for some strong violent content, bloody images, some strong language, and suggestive material. Look for the event film in theatres August 14th. Anna Hathaway and Ewan McGregor come face to face with a monstrous threat in The End of Oak Street, which looks like M. Night Shyamalan with retro-style Amblin vibes. It's set in the early 1980s. In the film, after a mysterious cosmic event rips Oak Street from suburbia and transports their neighbourhood to someplace unknown, the Platt family soon discovers that their very survival depends on them sticking together as they navigate their now unrecognisable surroundings. Maisie Stella and Christian Convery also star. Yeah, I like... the trailers don't give too much away other than the fact that their street has been moved and to a place where there are dinosaurs. And I think that is effective because it's an interesting setup. And the fact is, we're not at the stage yet where we're getting the trailers that are revealing all your key points in the film. You can quite often get it where a trailer will show you big moments, and some of those moments don't happen until like the last 20 minutes of the film. And I always think that kind of sucks, because yes, those are the pieces of the film that really stick out and really stick with you as a viewer. But if there's any potential that it's going to give away where the plot is leading to in the latter stages, I sort of feel it takes away some of the fun of the journey. Now, not everyone watches films in that way. I know some people will prefer to go, right, I want to know generally what's going on before I watch it, so I can have an idea of whether I like it or not, or where it goes. That's fine. But for me, I very much do prefer the approach of, okay, give me the general, not even synopsis, give me the general brief of the setup for this film. And from that point onwards, I can then kind of figure things out for myself and go along on the journey as intended. Got a surprise cameo here from the wife of horror. Don't know if you want to pop in, say hi on YouTube. No, she's putting her shoes on. She's she says she's too pregnant for that, but the wife of horror does say hi to our fans, because we are live on YouTube right now. No. We're just talking about The End of Oak Street. It's rated PG-13. Yeah. You'll have to bear with me one moment, live audiences, and I'm not editing this out of the video and audio, but I need to help with the sandals. One of the few duties that I can do with a cast on my leg. Not my fault. There we go. Husband of the Year award right there. Eddie says hi, Victoria. Okay, so we've got two more bits of horror news. Skeletons. John Goodman joins the cast of Strange Darling director's Creature feature. Of course, John Squires writes this one up too. Busy week. Willa Fitzgerald and Carl Gollner will reunite with their Strange Darling filmmaker J.T. Molnar for Skeletons, an upcoming creature feature that also stars Brie Larson. Deadline reports this afternoon that John Goodman has now also signed on. The film's cast will also include Ion Skye and Daithi O'Harahan. I don't know if I pronounced that right. It's a very Irish-looking name. From Sony Pictures, Skeletons is said to be a modern take on the creature horror film. J.J. Abrams is producing. Molnar will direct from a script by Brian Duffield, based on the short story Failsafe by Philip Francasi. Skeletons is told from the perspective of a young boy who slowly begins to discover that his beloved parents are hiding a disturbing secret about his mother's true nature. Film hails from Infrared, Bad Robot Productions, and Assemble Media. I mean, just even reading that makes me think I do need to give Strange Darlings a rewatch, because I absolutely love that film. Got the 4K, of course. Big fan of the work in it from both, the director and the two stars. So a new project with the same group, along with, of course, the incredible John Goodman and Brie Larson, is it's got my attention, that's for sure. The perspective of the young boy slowly beginning to discover that his beloved parents are hiding a disturbing secret. You could say, oh, that sounds a bit like Cobweb. Cobweb did subvert those expectations in the finale, sure. But I suppose it did have that kind of initial setup. I can't imagine this is derivative of that, though. But I enjoyed Cobweb enough for what it was. We'll be looking out for that. And that's it for the horror news. Let's move on to our reviews. Eddie in the chat, John Squires writes everything up. I wonder what he does in his spare time. Writes. I don't know. We're first up in the horror reviews. We are going to start with The Troll. Now, thank you, first of all, to Strike Media for sending me a screener of this film. Very much appreciated. Apologies for the late review. I've been busy getting ready for having a baby. So what we'll do with the horror reviews, we talk a little bit about the plot. We talk about the highs, the lows. I'll give you my opinion and score out of 10. So, Where is our general information about the people involved in this? So The Troll stars Brianna Lee of The Professional and The Seacliff Story, Katie Frame, Greg Sariadakis, Alina Acker, Matthew Iyer, Richard Mark Jordan, Jack Lesh, and Dominic Cost. I don't think... Oh, there we go. And it was also written and directed by Brianna Lee, so triple threat in this film. Killer Bee. A TikTok superstar thrives on the adoration of millions until a single cruel comment cuts too deep. Obsession takes hold as she tracks down the anonymous troll, infiltrating his life and destabilizing his family. Her descent culminates in a confrontation that lays bare the psychological toll of life in the spotlight. Okay, so this film is a bit of a tour de force from Brianna Lee, who is front and center for the film. It is a short runtime, 67 minutes, so it isn't like feature length, but it does look like a proper film, quote unquote. I think it sort of falls in that area of it's too long to be a short, too short to be a feature, similar to Milk and Cereal from the aforementioned Curry Barker of Obsession fame. So we're introduced to Brianna Lee and her inner psyche, where she's a social media star. She drops a video, comments go crazy, likes go crazy. Clearly become very wealthy, self-made from this avenue stream and or revenue avenue. Living the life, has her own personal driver, her PA, gets gifts everywhere, you know, almost like a superstar. And then one person comments saying, I can't remember exactly what they say, but the comment is about her looking old, or this is embarrassing. And the person who's done the comment, you know, they've got only one video on their channel. They don't have many followers. Their videos had hardly any views, so they're very much a nondescript. They're not a content creator. They're essentially just potentially a troll. I mean, we go on that basis because the comment is a bit troll-like, but it isn't as if there's like a whole history on this individual's channel showing that they do it to everyone. But I don't think any of that matters for Killer Bee. And she ends up going to great lengths to find this person. And her plan isn't really revealed until late on in the film. Now, with any sort of short film, or any film in general, but what I suppose is more apparent with short films because of their shorter time to cover a number of different areas of the story, you get to your punchline in the final couple of minutes. And it's quite surprising the route it goes, and it doesn't give you all of the information. It leaves enough to make you think, okay, what exactly have they done? And that's, you know, I don't want to kind of go too much down that rabbit hole to go into kind of spoiler territory. But Brianna Lee's Killer Bee doesn't really just kind of hold back and go, well, I'll teach them a lesson, or I'll show them that their words hurt. She is clearly someone that isn't quite the full ticket, let's say. And there is even some dialogue about, have you kept up to date with your meds? You know, your meds are out of date with the pharmacy, something like that, which is a nice little touch. It's well written. I think Brianna Lee is pretty decent in this, actually, considering that 90% of the film is following her character and her character's actions. So it's quite a lot to ask, especially with writing and directing it. I think it's worth a go. I would just say that it does feel like an extended short film, and I don't know really how better to describe that, but it doesn't feel like it is a full feature film. And I'm not necessarily saying that it overstepped its welcome. I'm not necessarily saying that things were dragged out to make it over an hour. I didn't really feel that. But at the same point, I'm not entirely sure what could have been added in to get it to 75 minutes, 80 minutes, even 90 minutes without, you know, feeling like padding and plodding. So it feels like it's told the story as needed. So I'm just going to review it as a film, not short film or feature film, whatever. But it's effective. 7 out of 10. We're especially in a world these days where, you know, people can be armchair critics and say what they want, and they're allowed to have opinions. They're allowed to think something is bad or cheesy or lame or whatnot. But also the person on the other end, how they take that. If they take it to heart, if they take it in a mental direction. Yeah, it's decent. I'm going to give The Troll 7 out of 10. We'll then move on to Clickbait. So if you're watching the video version, watching this live, that is the Clickbait film that I watched, not any of the various other ones that there's just a million other ones. It's bizarre that there does not appear to be, as far as I can see, an IMDb for this. I might just have a quick look because it's a lot easier to get my general information from IMDb. So I'll just keep yapping away while we're having a little look-see. Have to wrap up the show shortly because the dogs have not been fed yet, and it's a little bit past their dinner time, and they do not like that. They do not like that at all. So this is bizarre. There does not appear to be an IMDb page for Clickbait. It was a real film, wasn't it, that I watched? Bizarre. Anyway, so Clickbait is a 2026 psychological thriller directed by Uta Brieswitz, starring Lily Reinhardt as Daisy, a traumatized social media content moderator who becomes dangerously obsessed with tracking down the perpetrator of a violent, non-consensual viral video. It does also feature Joel Fry, who British TV fans will know him from a short stint in Game of Thrones. He was in the first few seasons of Plebs, which Plebs was decent. Plebs was decent for like an ITV2 type show. What else? Been in a few things, but he's one of those. He was in like a Ben Wheatley film, In the Earth, I think. He's one of those actors who seems to get a lot of work, but I haven't ever seen him in something and gone, well, he was really good in that. He seems to be having a bit of a moment, and he's playing quite a exaggerated character in this. But yeah, essentially, Daisy's role is to moderate social media videos, and quite often they see things that are incredibly disturbing, and it's their job to either mark it or delete it or whatever. But they can't just go around deleting everything because then that is a shutdown on freedom of speech. It has to be a genuine reason why something is to be flagged or to be removed. So it's quite a toll on the moderator's psyche. A number of different people have freakouts. Joel Fry's character, he has moments where he will just start screaming in the room that they're doing the moderating in, or smashing glass in the alleyway outside of the offices, just as a way to decompress, because the things that they have to look at will just wear you down, will have an impact on you. I mean, one of the characters sees a video, and you don't see any of these videos, but he hears the audio, and it's clearly a dog being abused, or just something horrible happening to a dog. And when he finishes work, he rushes into his house crying and rushes straight to his own dog, because the impact of that is seeing something utterly disturbing and then just wanting to seek comfort in your own world. So it's pretty effective in that regard. The pursuit into the underworld, or trying to find the video, or trying to find the people behind the video, is fairly interesting. The film does plod a little bit with the pacing. There's moments in like the first half where you're just sort of thinking, well, what's really the point of this film? And it doesn't lead up to a big showdown or anything. It does feel fairly grounded and fairly in the realms of realism. Like, she doesn't suddenly go on this big vigilante kick, but she does start putting her own stamp on things and not allowing people to get away with the sort of disgusting behavior in real life that she was seeing in these videos, which were things that were actually occurring in story work, in the world of the story. Yeah, it's all right, but it's a little bit of a boring watch, I will say. I think the performances are decent. Lily Reinhardt does carry the film. Joel Fry plays Joel Fry. I don't dislike him, but he doesn't really play many different sort of roles. So I'll just kind of say that. I'm going to give Clickbait 6 out of 10. It's available now on Prime to stream for free if you have a Prime membership. And then finally, also available on Prime, a recent release, Over Your Dead Body, 2026 American action comedy thriller, directed by Jorma Taccone of The Lonely Island, and written by Nick Kocher and Brian McElhenney. It is an English language remake of the 2021 Norwegian film The Trip. It stars Jason Segel, Samara Weaving, Paul Guilfoyle, Keith Jardine, who I think is an MMA fighter, yeah, Timothy Oliphant, and Juliette Lewis. Years after making his only feature film, struggling director Dan Burton is reduced to shooting pop-up ads. He is unhappily married to Lisa, an aspiring actress. After visiting his father Michael at a nursing home, Dan sets off with Lisa for a weekend at their lakeside cabin, where he plans to murder her with the help of Henry, an ex-convict acquaintance. At the cabin, Dan prepares chloroform to chloroform Lisa, only for her to tase her and tie him up. Awakening, Dan admits to planning to strangle Lisa, dismember her body, and dump her in the lake. Lisa reveals her own plan to murder Dan in a staged hunting accident with one of his father's guns. As they confront the rift in their marriage, including Dan's money troubles, and Lisa's infidelity, Henry arrives and knocks Lisa unconscious. There's a lot more going on in this film from after that point, but that's your kind of general setup. So this film is a decent watch. It's fun. We later on get performances in this from Timothy Oliphant and Juliette Lewis. Keith Jardine plays quite a funny comedic role, although there's a really quite uncomfortable scene early on with him, which, oh god, right, okay. But yeah, Timothy Oliphant, very good. Juliette Lewis, they're always quality, featuring in later on in the story as the story does evolve. There is a nice bit of gore later on. Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit CGI, but I do like the variety of setups for some of the gore as it appears later on in the story. And it's one of your typical warring couple realise that there is actually love for each other through being put into a situation where their own lives are in peril. They've come here to essentially kill each other because they just are both at that stage of just so many problems going on that they resent and hate each other. But when the chips are down and when the tables and guns are turned, that could be where love is rediscovered, potentially. Obviously, I've not really said exactly what those tables being turned are, but watch the film, figure it out. John Taccone's direction in this is a pretty adept director, but it's not one of those films where you could earmark any particular moments and say, oh, the directing of this scene stood out. It flows nicely. The shots are not jarring, so it's very much fine watch. Doesn't really stand out too much. Funny little coda scene near the end before the credits that I quite enjoyed. But yeah, I mean, it's not really an out-and-out horror film at all. It's fine. like some of the films recently, it passes the time. It's serviceable. I'm gonna give Over Your Dead Body 7 out of 10. Okay, Ghouls and Fiends, that is it for another edition of the Ministry of Horror. Thank you so much for sticking with the show. Thank you for checking in. If you're watching this on live, thank you very much, Eddie. If you're watching this on live, be sure to like the video, comment, share, because this will be in the this will just be saved onto the channel. TikTok, Ministry of Horror, check us out. It's been slowing a little bit because I just haven't had the time or the headspace to get much posted on there. So be sure to check out the TikTok if that is an app that you use. Instagram, as well as, of course, here on YouTube. Audio goes out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, maybe some other platforms. Whatever you listen to it on, be sure to like, follow, subscribe, comment, share. It really does help. And of course, if you'd like to support the channel, we do have a Patreon, patreon.com/Ministry of Horror. There is a free tier membership, but there is also paid tiers, which really do help with running the show. We'll be getting some bonus stuff over on there. I'll be getting my blogs up there on a weekly basis. Yeah, got a child on the way, been moving around in the house, moving the house around, so things have been a little bit quiet. Stick with me. Stick with me. Have patience. But yeah, thank you very much to our particular tiered members, the Gruff, and of course JP. JP, who was a massive help recently with work around the house. So, you know, much love to you guys. Much love to all the fans and regular followers of the Ministry of Horror. See you again next time. Goodbye.